Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Black History Month series. My name is Kristina Jordan, and I have the pleasure today of talking about Black health and wellness with Jordan Costen. He is the executive director and founder of a nonprofit, which he'll tell us a little bit more about in Northern Virginia. And he also provides therapy. And so, Jordan, why don't we get started?
Okay, sure.
Okay, so
Maybe
why
I'll
don't you
tell you.
start? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so I have about 5 to 6 questions for you, and feel free to elaborate or talk about them as you wish. So the first one is, would you mind sharing a little about your background and how you got involved in the work that you do?
Oh, wow, sure. Not a problem. So I came to Washington, D.C. to attend Howard University. And while I was there, my junior year, there was a notice put up on campus asking for tutors, people who were college students who wouldn't mind giving up some of their free time to help some of the local high school students in Washington, D.C. with their studies. I agreed to do it. Something my mother taught me is for whom a lot is given, a lot is expected. So I was more than happy to give back. I love working with youth. I love youth in general. So I did that. And I did that for about a year. And then I transitioned to another program with another nonprofit where I also was supporting youth, more of a tutoring / mentoring role. So I did that for a number of years in Washington, D.C. while I was working in IT account management. Decided to go to grad school, took a break from mentoring and tutoring during that time. And when I came out of grad school, I said, before I jump back in, what's something I would really like to invest my time in that I think will be beneficial and super impactful? And I thought about my life and growing up in the South, a gay Black male at the time who was just trying to figure out what his sexuality was and not feeling like there was anybody he could talk to. And that culminated in me just going through a lot of issues at 14. And when I was thinking, once I finished grad school and I thought about how can I give back, my mind went back to that 14-year-old who was just going through so much trauma, dealing with so many issues and ridicule. I said, what would have made his life different? If there was an organization or support system that would have embraced him and said, you know what, regardless of what you're struggling with, we're here to affirm you, we're here to support you, we're here to accept you. And so I looked to join a nonprofit that was LGBTQ youth focused. And when I looked in the area in which I lived, which is a very progressive area, I assumed there would actually be an organization that existed that I would be able to partner with and or volunteer with. And surprisingly, there wasn't. So I did the overly ambitious thing and said, this is something that's really necessary. It's crucial. And I founded a nonprofit that would meet that need. So to provide that space for LGBTQ youth, support, affirmation through social activities, through support groups. I mean, there's mentoring and tutoring, all the different things. So that was what that's sprung me forward in doing the nonprofit. And after doing that, we're in our 7th year, be 7 years as of March 29th, 2023. But a few years in, I realized, my IT account management job was not fulfilling. It was something I did because it paid the bills. And I'm all about passion and living and helping others. So after doing the work at Safe Space Nova, helping others, so I really love this work. I really don't want to do IT account management. And I did what I did, did some reflection. I said, you know what? I want to do what we're doing at Safe Space Nova, the nonprofit, and do that not just at Safe Space Nova, and other facets of my life, other facets in terms of helping people. So what that culminated was me going back to grad school to become a social worker, the job of helping people. So I went to grad school, became a social worker. I only finished in May 2021, did social work for about a year. And then I left the field just a few weeks ago so I could actually start providing therapy for members of the community. So that's how I got into therapy, is because you oftentimes don't see a person of color or a person who's openly LGBTQ as a therapist. And I wanted to make sure that people saw and knew that that existed. So I'm the guy, I built myself as an openly gay therapist, and that's how I got into therapy. So a little bit of a longer story, but kind of gives you the whole picture understanding of how I got to this point in time in my life.
Wow, that's a wonderful, wonderful segue into our next question, which is, could you elaborate? And I mean, I think you already really beautifully told the story about why the work is important to you. But maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on the intersectionality of race and LGBTQIA+.
Yes. So oftentimes when I have this conversation with counterparts that are not minorities, they oftentimes think that you can be one or the other, or you could be this one first and this one second. First being the color, because the first thing you see, and then second being my sexuality. What I often have to explain to them is that we're complex human beings, regardless of what your background, racial makeup, ethnicity, we're complex human beings, which means you're all things at once. So if you take that concept and think about a person similar to myself, I am Black and I am gay at the same time. So that means for all of the strengths that go with that, you think of both of those. For all the negativity that goes with that, that also comes with it. So walking into a room, I can deal with discrimination, I can deal with racism. I mean, all of those things can happen literally because I'm Black and I'm gay. And even more interesting than that is that discrimination can happen from your own community. So while I identify as African American or Black and LGBTQ, that doesn't mean that there are not African American or Black people who find what I do distasteful, to say the least. And I've heard from those people, and there are people in the LGBTQ community who are racist. So what I try to do in my work, in my life, is just say it's all about openness and inclusivity. That's what it's about. The work that we do at Safe Space Nova is about inclusivity. The work that I do, even as a therapist and as a social worker, is about inclusivity, about the intersection and saying, you know what? I know that there are some bad people out there who think of certain things simply because of how you present, how you look, who you're sexually attracted to. But I'm here to provide that space to say that doesn't matter to me. Labels, no labels, as long as you're comfortable in yourself, that's the most important thing that I generally want people to walk away with. Are you truly happy in your own skin being who you want to be?
Wow. Okay, thank you. So let me ask you this. What do you think about when you think about Black health and wellness? So Black health and wellness, what are the first few things that come to mind? And then if I could expand on that, what do you think it could evolve to?
So Black health and wellness is a lot of different things to me. It's where are you physically? Where are you emotionally? Where are you mentally? All of those things. Think about those different aspects of your life. So when you say spiritual, it's, whatever you believe in. Have you found your foundation? Do you feel like you have what you need to move forward and you're getting the understanding that you need when it comes to life? Spirituality, Christianity, following a lot, whatever that is for you. Mentally, are you feeling good mentally about yourself and about what you're doing? Now, again, I provide therapy for people. So this is something, especially within my own community, that I see is a significant problem for us. Because while we may work out, get our exercise, or make sure we're getting our education on and trying to get to become good, productive members of society, we oftentimes forget about our mental and our mental wellness and making sure that we're building in self-care and we're truly taking care of ourselves. We worry about a lot of the other facets, but that's one of the main areas I end up being concerned about from my own struggles, what I've seen within my own family, as well as in other circles in which I exist. So there's so much significance that I tend to put on mental well-being and making sure that people keep that as a priority. Emotionally and physically, those tend to speak for themselves. So physically is, are you getting some form of exercise? I'm not saying you need to go out here and be, Lance Armstrong or anything in terms of running races or spend several hours in the gym, but are you getting some form of exercise that helps stimulate you? The example I'll use for myself is I go running 2 to 3 times a week, 3.5 miles. The reason I do that is not just for physical exercise, but it also helps with my mental as well. I look at it as physical exercise and meditation, and it helps so much. So hopefully people can find something physical. If you haven't, continue to look out and search for things that will help you, something that you would like to do, it's something you feel motivated to do. So it's not so much of a chore when it comes to physical. And then emotional is just kind of checking into yourself. How are you feeling today? How are you feeling yesterday? Do you feel like you had a lot of successive days of not feeling so great or unmotivated or frankly, even depressed or anxious? Well, let's not sweep that under the rug. Let's talk about that. Whether it's talking in a one-on-one with a therapist, talking with a trusted family member or friend, let's make sure our emotions are checking. If they're not, let's do some reflection to find out why, so we can be in a better place. I try to treat the whole person, and these are all the different aspects of a person's life that they generally don't think about. They may be thinking about the physical and not the emotional. They may think about the emotional, but not the mental. So I try to take your whole person, and let's make sure all these different facets of your life are in a good place. And if not, what can we do to get you there? And we being the operative word, because I always tell people they're the curator of their lives. They know themselves best. So I'm just here to always be a help and be a guide as best I can.
Yeah. Wow. So, I was thinking that oftentimes, much like you said, people focus on one or two aspects of themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're juggling like work and family and commitments and a whole host of things, and say you have a physical ailment, how is it that you work with people to get them to understand, to focus on these other aspects of themselves, right? So give us an example or two about how one can incorporate opportunities for self-care.
Okay, I'll give you a good example. I work with a college student. I'm sorry, he graduated college. He's in grad school now, but I work with a grad student. Upon meeting and working with him, he's that person that on paper sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Grad school, finished undergrad, while in school, sorry, not in school, working full time, did all those things, had a social life. And so he seems on paper like, hey, everything is going great. But when I talked to him and asked him specific questions about himself and his personal time, it was disturbing somewhat the response I would even get, because it just wouldn't happen. It's, oh, I spend my time with my friends and I work. I spend a little time at the gym. I'm doing my schoolwork. It's like, but you're not doing anything for self-care. You're not doing anything for you. So all these different aspects of his life are being taken care of, and he's dotting his I's, crossing his T's, checking off the boxes. But I said, you're not taking care of you. And what would often happen is he would have these little moments and fits to himself where he would find himself just maybe feeling down. And so what he did was we talked about what are some of the things that he loved to do that he had not done for quite some time. Very simple. What's something that brought you joy? Going to the movies. Okay. So homework was for him to build into the calendar going to the movies. Seems very simple, right? But something like that, unless somebody points that out, that you're not allowing yourself the self-care time that you need and you need to, more than likely you're not going to do it. You've been conditioned to think and act within a certain way. So you need generally an outside force, somebody who's watching you and to say this is missing, to tell you. And what he's done is incorporated single movie dates into his calendar that he does a couple of times a month now. And that, something that seems so trite, so little, has made such a difference for him. Where he's like, I'm not feeling overwhelmed. I feel like my life is more balanced. I'm not finding myself in lonely moments. Like, he feels good with something as simple as like, and I have my movie dates. And we're sitting there and he's happy to talk about his movie dates. Like, this movie came out, that movie came out. He's got a movie pass now. So he uses a movie pass and he just goes to movies. And that's his self-care time. Not his work time, not his gym time, not his hang out with friends time. That is his time to enjoy watching the movie, which he loves to do.
You've just like brought up so many questions for me.
Mm-hmm.
So just like listening to that, what is bringing to my mind this question about something that we've been sort of exploring here, a group of us here at CREC, about rest and this act of rest. It could be active rest, but this idea of rest as one's birthright.
Mm-hmm.
Rest as an act of resistance, rest in not necessarily in opposition, but in balance of work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And all of these ideas that we sort of been conditioned that's normal and typical in the way that we live. Could you talk about that? Have you thought about that at all?
I incorporate the rest or talks about how much sleep you're getting into the self-care. So they're closely related. And if
Right.
you're not taking care of yourself, certain aspects of your life tend to start to falter. And what I find is that a lot of my clients will come in thinking there's one aspect of their life, like this is the aspect, this is the issue over here. And what we do is I give you a whole list of questions. It's similar to going to a doctor's office. Can you fill all this out? It's like, oh yeah, I'm not sleeping well. Okay, well, how many hours are you sleeping? Well, I'm only sleeping 3 or 4 hours, but that's not my issue. That actually is your issue, or at least part of the issue. Because if you're not getting a certain amount of sleep, you're not going to be your full authentic self every single day given to others around you, whether it be in a workforce and a social setting. So rest as a part of self-care is extremely important. And without having it consistently, are you truly being your are you being your true authentic self in these environments? So are you putting out your best work product when you slept 3 or 4 hours on a regular basis? Probably not. Are you putting out your best academic work when you're talking to students? Probably not. And so oftentimes one of the arguments I will hear, pushbacks I should say, from clients is, well, I can't go from 3 or 4 hours to like I'm gonna sleep 8 hours. It's like, that's not that's not what I'm asking of you. I'm understanding that this is an issue or an area that you want to improve on. So if you sleep 3 or 4 hours a night, why don't we just start with like adding an hour and we just do it? And based on the pace that a client chooses, because they're the curators of their life, it could be anywhere from, I've had clients go an hour a day. So, okay, I'm going to do 5 hours this day, six, keep going and see how that goes. I have some we take it super slow, which means we're just going to add 1 extra hour every week or every 2 weeks. And we're just going to slowly build till you get to the point where you feel like you're in a reasonable place of like, okay, I'm at 6, 7 hours and I feel like I'm getting the rest that I need. So we slowly just try to build it in.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Stigma around therapy, stigma around seeking help, stigma as it relates to the Black community and communities of color, as opposed to other races
Mm-hmm.
or white communities.
There is a fairly decent sized stigma as it relates to therapy, especially within our communities of color. Oftentimes, what we tend to say is it's best to talk to either somebody within the family or somebody, a person of the cloth.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
just speaking of my personal experience, I'm the grandson of a preacher, and his wife, like all of my grandparents, were very heavily involved within the ministry. So we have our own family church, minister, his wife, my grandmother was actually taught at seminary school. It's a college for preachers. So
Yeah.
I very much know that sentiment. And in terms of if you have issues, it was something that was more tightly held within our family, or at worst within our religious leaders in terms of maybe talking to them. But at some point in my life, I realized that therapy was super important and necessary for me to get to a better place. I didn't experience that until I was in college. And if people don't know, college is when it's actually the most affordable because it's generally free. So and the improvements I saw just helped me so much. So I just love what therapy did for me. And that was my personal journey. And then what I did is I said, I continue to live in the Washington, D.C. area where I still live now. I made sure that since it was something that was so good for me, not saying one size fits all, I made sure to share my experience within my circles. So while I've migrated away from my family and my school of thought has evolved, I wanted to make sure I shared that with my family members, especially those of us who are younger, not as old as our grandparents and great grandparents who come from a different time and still may not want to believe that therapy is something that is really beneficial and something we should be talking about. But talking to siblings and cousins, and also talking to other people. I 100% believe in leading by example. So prior to me being a social worker, providing therapy, any of that, for over a decade, I've been a proponent and said, like, for anybody that wants to learn or to listen, I'm more than happy to tell you what therapy has done for my life. And I try to bring that up as much as I can in situations where I feel like people are struggling. And again, I've been doing this for decades. If you feel like you're struggling, you're hitting a wall, and the things that you've been doing to try to help you aren't getting you to a better place, maybe seek out some therapy. This is what it's done for me. So
That's great. So continuing on that idea about stigma, how do you think that the stigmatism around seeking healthcare support impacts healthcare outcomes for Black communities and communities of color?
A lot of people see seeking therapy and then others finding out. It's a risky behavior because they don't want other people to find out because of what they may think. As a result of that, you're still going to be struggling, especially when it comes to mental. So if you're dealing with anything from anxiety to depression to suicidal thoughts, those thoughts are still, and it's not to say they can't go away on their own or with maybe some other type of assistance. But I think the best assistance that you can have is going to be with therapy, with confronting what are those big issues that are affecting. And here's a big part: they're affecting your quality of life. If it's affecting your quality of life, I generally recommend that you go talk to somebody. And without doing so, it just stays, right? Like you're stagnant. Who wants to be stagnant? Who wants to be stagnant when you could be moving beyond this issue and living what is always, your best life or being the best version of you and being happy?
Yeah. Okay, final question of the hour. How do you think we can better promote Black health and wellness? What do you see coming down the pike? What is like live right now? What are some of the trends and the fads, some of the things that you think are going really well, and some of the things that we should be thinking about exploring further?
I think one of the best things to do is open up the dialogue. So in leading by example or talking about my experience and doing it, I've done it in schools, I've done it in libraries, wherever I get an invite to talk about mental health, I'm there and I'm more than willing to do it and even delve into my own past so that people can know they're not alone, because that's part of our problem is that we, as in our silos and our minority communities, tend to think that we're the only ones. So let's just not worry about it. It's not a big deal. Let's just keep it internal. And that's not the way to go. I want to make sure that we talk about it. So whatever conversations I can have, I in the area in which I live, I've talked to everybody from school board, school administrators, teachers, and beyond, as well as businesses and other community partners. But just making sure that they know not only does Safe Space Nova, the nonprofit, exist to support LGBTQ youth, but Jordan Costen, a proponent of mental health, is, and he's more than happy to talk to anybody about what mental health is, what it looks like, what's the good part about seeking out therapy, talking through your issues. I'm always more and willing to do that. And then what I do is, in addition to that, I love creating a sense of community. As a person who felt like he didn't have community growing up, it's so important. So we have Safe Space Nova, a sense of community for LGBTQ youth. I've also pulled together a list of social workers in the Washington, D.C. area so that we can meet and we can start talking about these issues. And when we have ideas for conferences or places that we think we should go, we talk about it amongst each other. And then we say like, okay, maybe I can't do it because I have this going on, but maybe you can do that. So now there's a working group of social workers who both socialize and talk about the opportunities that we have to talk about mental health and better help our community. And it's a Black men social work group simply because there just aren't that many of us, and we're looking to find a sense of community. So we came together, we're doing that, we're continuing to doing the work, and we're saying, how can we improve, not just individually, people who are seeking us out as therapists, but how can we better help our community? How can we promote better mental health? And trust me, we're going about this whatever way we can think of that comes within the group. We are investigating it and seeing if it makes sense and seeing if it's something that we can do.
Wow. Okay. So everyone, y'all, this is Jordan Costen. He is, again, the CEO and founder of Safe Space Nova. He is an advocate and a proponent of Black health and wellness. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Is there any final thought that, I love what you say about us being the curator of our lives, right? Mm-hmm. Like we get to curate, bring into our lives different practices and aspects of health and wellness, things that make us feel whole. Is there anything else that you'd like, any last gem that you'd like to sort of leave us with?
There's two gems. One I often give out because I think it's the best. So I'll give you be the change you want to see. That seems very cliche, and I'm sure you probably heard it before for whoever is watching, but those words have so much meaning behind them. I take them to heart, and that's clearly why I do the work that I do. And by doing that, I've helped so many people. And I enjoy that and I love that. So be the change you want to see. We can't always wait for other people to make that change. And the second thing when it comes to that, the second thing I want to make sure that I say is don't be scared to ask questions. Questions when it comes to, it could be something as simple as what's going on in the lesson or something that's going on in your life. And there generally are answers out there, whether they be on the internet, in a book, or a person who has a certain level of expertise and experience maybe to help you, but never be scared to ask questions. There's going to be an answer, and that could better help you with whatever it is you're searching for.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for creating that space and living out your truth. It takes a lot of courage, especially given what you've been through, to then create the space that you wanted to live in, to provide it for youth, so that they have safe spaces to go. You know, you operated from a place of love rather than a place of pain. And that is just remarkable. It's just so beautiful, and very inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you on behalf of CREC. Thank you on behalf of the Black Employee Network Group here at CREC. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.